What's up, guys? This is Adi again from Gate 7 International, coming with the third deep dive of the summer. This time, we're going to be talking about Nicolas Freire, the new center back, Argentinian center back of Olympiacos that is announced at the time of recording. So we are very excited to talk to you guys about the new center back. And before we get started, as always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every engagement continues to help us grow the community. And subscribe if you want to see more. Follow, ring the bell if you want to be notified anytime the deep dives go live, anytime a show happens, so that you can always be up to date with your favorite red and white team. Now, we're very excited to talk about Nicolas Freire for a couple of reasons. One, the rebuild is continuing. It's exciting. It's a time of hope, but at the same time, it's a time of fierce anxiety for everybody in the club. So I won't mess around too much more. I'm going to jump right into it. Nicolas Freire is an Argentinian center back I already brought up. Really important thing to remember, he has a Spanish passport. This is going to be very important for our European list when he joins the team. 29 years old. He sits at 6'1" tall, 186 centimeters, 80 kilograms, 176 pounds. This is a pretty big boy. Not as big as Vicente Iborra, but still a pretty big boy, all things considered. Has played pretty much his entire career as a center back. Not too much versatility. You know what we're getting with this guy. He's a left-footed center back, and he's been that way almost since day one. He's another player that a lot of you guys have been in some uproar about. There's been uproar about every single signing, but this one's been a little bit different because the fans from his original club in Mexico that he's coming in on loan from, Pumas, they seem a little too happy for him to be gone. And that has concerned a lot of you guys. Well, Olympiacos has been in desperate need of a left-footed center back for some time. We've known for a while that there were 3 positions outlined that we were going to fill immediately. First was obviously defensive midfielder, which we brought in with Vicente Iborra. Now the center back, and we also know that a forward is coming as well. Freire is an aggressive left-footed center back, and he will more than likely be a starter for the club, especially going through qualifiers until we bring in another signing. Cisse, we know, has been reported to be injured, which is why he wasn't with the team for preseason training. But the feeling is that he probably won't be a part of the team even when he returns. Hopefully, Bagagliani stays with the first team, but if he does, he's probably going to be, at best, a third or fourth choice center back. That being said, even with this signing, there's no way we can go through a full season with Freire, Doi, Ba, and assuming Bagagliani sticks around. Those starting 4, you can't make it through a full season at a competitive level. But we'll elaborate on that later. Regarding the player's profile, for a center back, he has okay ball control. He's not a Semedo by any means. I don't want anybody to expect that, but he's a very aggressive ball winner. Adequate at anticipating ball movement. Pretty good at closing players down, especially one-on-one. Has a propensity for a long ball. A little bit weird of a characteristic that we brought in for a center back, all things considered, with Cordon and Martinez. But we'll get into that also later with the player profiles. So let's get into it. We're going to get into some stats here, and we're going to get started with goal creation. We have the stats, of course, that we bring up. This is a percentile chart comparing him to all other center backs in the Mexican League, Mexican First Division. And as we always do, we're going to start with goal threat. Compared to other center backs, he is above average in terms of his goal contribution. He outperformed his XG, so sustainability is probably a question. He only sees scoring chances off of set pieces. All of those goals, anything that wasn't from a penalty, of course, came off of corner kicks. Not amazing in the air. Don't hold your breath for a lot of set piece goals. We're probably more likely to see those from Iborra. Assist creation, one context for assists. Anything and any opportunity that creates pretty decent danger, it always is in the form of a long ball that he sends over the defense that's run on by either the forward or the winger. He can pick the looks out, but it's they're not always creating danger. Sometimes they're mishit. And I brought this up a little bit briefly during the profile, but it's an odd characteristic that we see picked up by Diego Martinez because he prefers his center backs to just play quickly with what's around him. Quick 1-2 touch with this guy, which this guy can do, but not necessarily doesn't going to be letting them do long balls. And we'll evaluate more on that when we get to the passing and build-up section. Additionally, as a goal threat, he can be a goal threat to his own team. He does have a mistake in him. I saw quite a few times where he would play the ball and it would end up at an opponent's feet, sometimes mostly through a deflection. But I can see mistakes like that being a reason why some of these fans were happy to see him go. It honestly, it gives me Yacine Meria flashbacks for those of you that remember the 2018-2019 season. So again, little bit of some concern there, but we'll see what happens. Moving on, passing and build up. He's not a central figure in build up by any means. Like I said, guys, not a Ruben Semedo. Outside of a restart or build up out the back from a goal kick or another set piece, his role will be quite minimal in possession. Unless, of course, he's shooting a long ball past the defenses. The passes are going to be either to his partner, his center back partner, if he's sitting parallel to him, or it's going to go to the left wing back or the check down center mid, whoever's going to be the deepest, most likely Ibora. So those are the types of things and expectations I have. That's probably 90% of what his play will be like. He won't get super far forward to help an offensive play. He usually just kind of sits back and plays what's in front of him. He's going to usually be the last man back. At least he was in Mexico. His overall build-up ability is also pretty average. You can see here in the build-up section, we're not looking at anybody that's going to be doing a lot of ball carrying forward, not a great dribbler. Pass accuracy is also not amazing, but that's weighed down by the just sheer number of balls he's hitting forward. That's why you also see his progressive pass metric compared to other CBs really high, because he was sending a lot more long balls than most other center backs did, at least in Mexico. Not integral, especially in open play, getting the ball to the final third. Outside of those long balls, touches in the penalty area are coming from those set pieces. So keep that context in mind when you see that in the chart. So don't expect him to be super involved in any of those scenarios. There were a few scenarios I did see where the line was high and he was part of the high line. He seemed pretty comfortable playing in it, but it wasn't a usual occurrence. So I'm still going to imagine that for us, I can't, and the way that I imagine Martinez is going to play the team, I don't see him being super involved offensive guy, even in a high line. He's going to be the last man back, dishing the ball to whoever's near him, probably 1 or 2 touches max. That's kind of how I see that moving, all things considered, with him. Now, moving on to his defensive attributes, above average compared to center backs in the Mexican league. Nothing, again, stellar that is going to make me think, wow, this guy's going to be a solid brick wall for us. He's solid 1v1 closing players down. I don't want you guys to think I think this guy is terrible. No, not by any means. He's, in this respect, he's above average. Aggressive, will really give players a hard time. Shirt tug, being a nuisance, you name it. This guy, he's aggressive, especially closing these players down. He does draw a fair number of fouls. Similar in card risk to Ba. Talking real numbers here with regards to the cards. Last season, he drew 8 yellows and 1 red. In Ba's worst season, in terms of the number of cards, it was a couple years ago, 12 yellows and 2 reds. The season before last, he drew 6 yellows and a red. This season was pretty good. He only got 3 yellows. So maybe this is another reason fans weren't super happy with Freire, because he not only is he a little bit of a liability with these deflections and playing balls that opponents can capitalize on, but he's also a card risk. Maybe that's another reason. Just something that I noticed in the tape. In the air, he's okay. Not not amazing. He's stable in our penalty area at least. So on the defensive side of things, he can draw a foul doing it, but he seemed to be pretty decent. Offensively, I wasn't overly impressed with what I saw of him in the air. Again, more seemed to be more focused on just pushing people off of himself versus trying to win the ball. And he's a very aggressive player in that respect, which is good. I mean, we're seeing the pattern here, but the ability to win the ball, the ability, I'm just not convinced that he's amazing in that field. So, all in all, just to sum it all up, great. I think on the ground, ground duels, loose balls. I think he's solid in that regard, or at the very least above average. Not an amazing, but above average. In the air, not overly convinced myself, but everything else, I think he's at least going to function at a solid level. Now, an important thing for me when it comes to rating center backs, or not just center backs, but players that are coming in that are replacing other players, is to compare them to the players they're replacing. In this case, I'm going to take a look at the outbound Sokratis, and we're going to compare Freire to Sokratis. Now, here's the radar chart. You guys are used to these now. This is the third time you're seeing it in the deep dive. So, little comparison of just a few of his metrics compared to Sokratis and looking at the percentiles compared together. So, here in the radar, the story is it's pretty straightforward. Sokratis, a little bit better on the ball, more accurate, and better in the air. Sokratis, as we know, was outside of Cisse, was one of our best aerial ball winners on the team. Also one of the best in the league. Freire has a higher propensity for the long ball, but is more aggressive on the ground and a little bit better on the ground. Plus, he's a bit faster than Sokratis is. So Sokratis may have been better goal threat, better on the ball, but as far as the defensive aspect, I see a little bit more positive defensive outlook from Freire than I do Sokratis. Not to mention Freire is also left-footed, so we need that as well. Again, make that as you will. I'm not saying he's a direct replacement for Sokratis. I'm just saying if we're comparing him to what we've lost, this is what he brings. He may not have the aerial ability or the ball playing ability that Sokratis does, but he seems to be much more aggressive of a character and a little bit better when winning those balls on the ground than Sokratis was. So keep all of this in mind as we discuss and as we're talking about these center backs, what we're giving up, what we're looking at, and what the value proposition is. So, bearing all of this data in mind, bearing everything that you've looked at, before I share you my opinion, I want to point out again, I pointed this out also with the Kini deep dive. There is a pattern emerging with these signings. And I'm going to echo again what I said about what Diego Martinez and Cordon have said about these signings. They are looking for a certain mentality. It is not just ball skills that they're looking for. Obviously, they want a certain type of profile, players that are going to listen, but they are also looking for a mentality. Look at what we discussed and what we saw with Vicente Iborra and Kini. These guys are fighters. They are aggressive. Freire is of a similar personality, similar profile. He is a fighter. He is aggressive. That is now three of these types of personalities that have come into the club. Personalities that have been lacking in this club for quite some time. That being said, despite the fact that I recognize that this guy's a fighter, I do have my concerns about this transfer. If we're looking at him as a Sokratis replacement, I do worry about his aerial ability because that was one thing Sokratis had that helped us at least in set pieces. So we're replacing him with someone that is not so good. And although we brought in a guy like Iborra who is good in the air and will help us out, it seems like our defense is trading a trait for another. You know, we've traded away a guy that was good in the air, that was pretty good on the ball for a guy that is maybe better on the ground, but then we lose that aerial ability on the defensive end. His propensity for cards also worries me. Ba is enough of a liability, as many of you very well know, and we've talked about for the last couple of years. Even though he had a pretty good season for us last season, that still sticks with us, that liability that Ba has. I'm also a little bit confused as to how a player like Freire, with his propensity for long balls, has has attracted interest from Diego Martinez. Obviously, it's not, the long ball isn't the only thing we're looking at. We talked about the mentality, and he can play the ball out the back, but the guy I can't imagine that he's going to be given a leash that's long enough to be doing stuff like this. And the long ball is a part of the positive outlook on him, is the fact that you can see that from him once in a while, the ball's in behind the defender. It's just interesting to me in that respect, and very interesting that this type of profile is something that's being brought in. Um, Lastly, the media vibes I brought up earlier. All it's going to take is one or two stupid giveaways, and the fan base turns on him. If we don't see any of those stupid giveaways, I don't think you'll have an issue with the fan base. But all it's going to take is one or two, and I saw enough of them in Mexico that makes me worry that we could see that here. In the end, though, as I brought up with the other two signings, this signing will be judged based on the signings that we make in August. If this is the only support we're bringing in for the center back position, I'm concerned because as I mentioned briefly earlier, I do not think we can make it through a season with what we have, including Freire as a signing. If we're bringing in a real first choice center back, I'm okay with the signing. It's low risk, loan with a buyout option, but it's not enough for us to get through this season. And that's the silver lining here. Right now, we're looking at just getting past the first leg of the playoffs, securing at least, or the first leg of Europa League qualifiers, I should say, securing group stage competition. As long as we can get through these qualifiers, we secure at least some European competition, and then that makes it a little bit easier for us to secure at least better talent. We get through that, we can then look to the next thing. So, all in all, guys, I am concerned about this signing. I understand the signing again. We're talking about the pattern that we're seeing here. I am concerned, just like you guys are, with how happy a lot of other fans were to see him go. But I also want to remind you guys, fans were happy to see Jan Mbila go too when we got him from Saint Etienne. So just keep that in mind. I see some of the parts of the profile that Martinez values. Again, I'm just going to bring up, there are things that worry me. You guys know I made it pretty clear. There are things that worry me about the signing, but all of that in context will change based on who we sign come the end of the transfer window. Low risk, loan with a buyout. If he doesn't do well, we send him back. It is what it is. All of this, I'll repeat myself one more time. All of this could change our outlook depending on who comes in August and what the team looks like in September when the transfer window ends. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you liked the deep dive. I hope you found it informative. I hope that I changed your mind, or maybe at least made those of you that were super negative on the signing at least understand the signing a bit more. We are preaching on Gate 7 International patience, patience, patience. Let Cordon cook. Let Cordon do what he is really good at. These early signings may not be the BAMs you're all looking for, but they fill a role and they serve a purpose. Let's let Cordon do his work and give him time to fix the mess that's here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is Gate 7 International, by the fans, for the fans. It is going to be a busy August, I'm sure. It's probably going to be a busy last week of July as well. So until next time, guys, this is Gate 7 International, and we look forward to chatting with you again in the future.